and welcome back to CoinDesk live from Argentina. We are at the Avalanche Summit, the premier Avalanche community event in 2024, experiencing it all here in Buenos Aires. And right now we're talking about games. It was a big theme yesterday on this show. Everyone was talking about Web3 games, especially off the grid. I hate to be shilling one project so much, but everyone is talking about it here at the Avalanche Summit. And I got to ask you both, Dreamer, I'll start with you. What is this success, this frenzy, the fact that everybody is talking about off the grid, the fact that off the grid has surpassed Web2 games like Fortnite and Rocket League mean for the industry?
It's huge. So we've been building in this space for 3 years. We started before anybody even talked about Web3 gaming. So DeFi Kingdoms 3 years ago had an idea to gamify DeFi, make it easy and fun to come in and start being in DeFi, understanding NFTs, and are building a game on top of it. When the bear market hit, everybody's like, Web3 gaming's dead. You would see that tweet. You would see people pulling out. You would see people no longer delivering on the money that they got from VCs, but others continued to build. People like DeFi Kingdoms, people like MapleStory, and people like Gunzilla building off the grid. Now, when it hits, for it to not only be big numbers in the crypto space, but big numbers in the big boy gaming space, this shows the potential of the technology. Others will pay attention. And as we see that lagged follow up, the next 3 to 5 years are going to be huge for what we all knew was possible years ago.
Angela, I want to get your perspective. That's obviously Dreamer's perspective from someone who's been building a Web3 game for the past 3 years. MapleStory, already massive IP, already dominating the gaming space outside of Web3. What does the success for Off the Grid mean to you? How are you looking at it?
I mean, honestly, it's a very, very happy situation for everybody involved. I'm not going to lie. We've been in the business, the online games business for 30 years now, and we've seen a lot of games just rise and a lot of people adapt to new technology and new experiences. And I think, the success that we're seeing with Off the Grid is sort of like, you know, like a showcase of how this industry is evolving and how we are also evolving with the technology and how we can showcase this experience to users at the end of the day. And so MapleStory universe, I think, is going down a very similar path and thinking about the user experience and thinking about how is this going to translate to the end user? How is this going to translate to the experience and the ramping up and everything in the midst of all that? And I think, we're at this stage where we can comfortably say, hey, we sort of now understand the technology and we're getting into the nitty gritty of how we can really implement this in real life and deliver this as a convincing experience for users. And I think, we're definitely seeing, a lot of growth here. So very exciting.
Angela, I want to stay with you. I just love the idea that MapleStory is a 21-year-old game, right? That people have been playing all these years. There's obviously many learnings that you can take from running a game for that length of time. What's like the number one value add that you see by adding Web3 to the mix with the MapleStory universe that's upcoming?
Right.
Soon?
I mean, we have learned a lot of lessons during our servicing of the Web 2 version of MapleStory. And at the core of that was, the importance of the community at the end of the day, the importance of users who come into the game and enjoy the experience and build the experience themselves. So the core thing that we have actually, learned the most was it's the users and it's the community at the end of the day that shape a culture of the game, that shape the experience and that define, what MapleStory is. Because if you think about it, you play a game called MapleStory, but then when you think about all the experiences that go into that, you also think about watching YouTube videos and walkthroughs and talking with your friends online and, meeting new people just inside the game. And all of that constitutes MapleStory. And so, diving into this Web3 experience, I think the main way that we wanted to utilize this new technology was not to introduce something that is completely different from, what we have been offering in the past. Rather, we think of this as an upgrade or an expansion of sorts, and we're using blockchain to really be able to incorporate the community and what they're also building into the MapleStory experience and recognize their contributions and say, hey, this is an IP, this is an experience that we grow together.
Dreamer, I want to put that community question to you, right? You mentioned the builders who stuck around. Presumably some users also stuck around.
For sure.
How do you keep the community engaged, right? I mean, I think all of us sort of suffer to some degree from the shiny new object syndrome. You guys have been building for 3 years. People have been sticking with you through that time. How have you kept them loyal?
Well, I think being willing to survive is a big show of dedication to the community and transparency. So many of our counterparts, when their funding fell through or tokens go down or people are all at each other's throats in crypto, they just kind of back up, give up, start something else later. We never did. We went through hacks where we lost our whole treasury. We had to continue to raise, not traditionally, but with blockchains, because you see the headliners that off the grid's doing 5 to 6 million transactions a day. We were doing that 3 years ago. People knew our potential and we didn't give up. The last piece is transparency. Traditional companies, they report quarterly. We report weekly. We have weekly AMAs where our community submits questions. Maybe they're concerning, maybe they're fun, maybe they're around gameplay. Every single Thursday, we take an hour, hop in our either Discord or Twitter or YouTube, and we stream and record our report to our community. They're the stakeholders. The fees in the game are what are sustaining our building. So we feel an obligation to be as transparent to them and make sure we take their feedback and their concerns. Now, it makes it really difficult because sometimes we want to go one way and they want to go another, and we have to find that middle ground.
Tell us more about finding that middle ground, and let's start with the hack. How did you deal with your community during that hack?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a hack that was related to us. It was related to a previous blockchain, a chain that shall not be named, but actually it's called Harmony. So there was a hack related to their bridge, which is their direct, probably main attack vector in the space. There's a lot of bridge hacks that happen. We had nothing to do with it, although it drained our treasury. So when we come back, it's very hard to say, hey, this wasn't our fault. We were exposed. This is what we're doing about it. We're taking our IP. We're finding other chains that are willing to pay us to bring our transactions to them, and other chains where we could build new custom solutions. Chains like Avalanche. At that time, we had just launched the very first L1, still the largest L1, 750 million transactions. Other chains like Clayton, and more recently, Metis. That's how we sustained ourselves and answering the question of what do we do next?
You built a game around DeFi, right? And so I can imagine that your audience is Web3 native, really interested in the financialization of games. How do you sustain an audience like that?
It is really hard. If you notice, my jersey says DFK because 3 years ago, everybody's like, DeFi, DeFi, DeFi. Now they're like, DeFi game. We're like, no, we gamify DeFi, yes, but we're also tokenizing an MMORPG game in more of like the Final Fantasy World of Warcraft style. So if you were upstairs yesterday, we reported on our battle system. We're in the battle, 3v3 turn-based battle. There's 30 different tokens represented. The heroes are NFTs, the weapons are NFTs, the potions are tokens as well. You got skins overlaying. So it isn't just about DeFi. That was the foundation to build a play for fun game supported by all the marketplaces and tokens.
Yeah, Angela, I want to turn that to you, right? So I think like the interesting thing about GameFi, even with like Web3 social, right? There's the game part of GameFi and there's the Fi part of Fi. And maybe in the early days, you guys were more indexed to the Fi part of GameFi.
Yes,
you guys, I would imagine, are maybe more indexed to the game side. Where do you see sort of identifying that balance between the two things such that people stick around and get enjoyment from these titles?
Yeah, no, I really strongly believe that the core of all this is to really balance like the product that you're working with, the IP that you're working with, and work with the fundamentals, right? And I really love how Dreamer said that, MMORPGs is also about DeFi, it's also about the economy part of the game. And I would want to echo that like really strongly. If you think about MMORPGs as a genre, like, just in general, it already has a very robust economy system inside the game. And one of the core parts of managing and doing live operations on a game like that is also managing the economy and being aware that people can already trade their in-game items with another user inside the game. And I think where we're going with this is adding blockchain onto MapleStory does not change the core premise of what the game was and how users enjoy the game. It merely expands this to a whole another dimension. Now we're saying like, hey, you can transparently look at all of the transactions that you have had. You can look into, the nitty-gritty of the numbers and the transactions that are happening usually behind the scenes, like, in the past. And we're also saying that now transactions or, interoperability that allows us to just be, a little bit more present, not only inside the client of a single game, but beyond that, like on a website, in mobile form, or in console, or even in the more, financial-ish apps. Like, let's think about it. If you are looking at an NFT and all of the gear and the items inside our games are NFTs as well as the characters. If you focus on the gaming part, then we could easily be talking about expansions like a Move to Earn MapleStory app where your character grows as as you move and walk. But then we can also be talking about the economy part of this game and talking about, hey, because these items, your sword basically already has a lot of value that other people do recognize also. You can play off of that part and go more into the financials and say, hey, we're building a lending protocol. And so I think we don't have to think about growth or expansion in one single way, focusing only on the game part or the finance part. If we are working off of a genre that already specializes and is already like centered on both, we want to be as balanced as possible and really believe that at the end of the day, this is what the users want as an authentic MapleStory experience.
Want to go to the back end for a little bit, talk tech a little bit. So I think, so zooming out, I would say a lot of chains are vying for the Web3 gaming prize, right? Whether it's Sui, whether it's Aptos, whether it's Avalanche, whether it's Polygon, whether it's Solana, right? From the outside, I'm very curious, sort of the technical due diligence that you guys do. You mentioned your subnet/Avalanche L1. What are some of the technical benefits that you see about developing in that context? I'll put that to you first, and then over to you.
Well, if we think about a game on the blockchain, now you have players that are going to be experiencing new problems, gas, wallets, onboarding, and then we even mentioned bridging if you have a cross-chain game, and then the different risks associated. What certain games are doing are trying to make that as seamless as possible. Now you can go the way where you don't even realize it's there, or you go the way where you're also educating people in crypto so they take control of their finances. So now we're looking at subnets. Subnet solves a lot of problems. If you look at an Avalanche layer 1, or previously known subnet, it makes it so that if gas is going up, and gas is the cost to transact on that blockchain, if it's going up, it's because your own users. Now, if you're on a blockchain and somebody else is very busy and active, they might impact your experience. Maybe it gets slower. Maybe it gets more expensive. That's where being on almost an island, your own chain, or as Gun says, many of these chains moving as one that can interact with each other and communicate, you're solving those problems. You can choose to have your interface be more easily acceptable or accessible as well. So now compared to other chains, nobody else is providing the same experience to launch your own blockchain for your own app in as seamless and highly like technical advanced way. Low finality, low fees, easy to set up.
So yeah, same question to you. Why the Avalanche L1 route as opposed to other paths?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the business of operating a game and servicing, especially on global, you got to recognize that like you're not talking about a service that's going to be open from 9 to 5. You're talking about a service that has to be open 24/7 with reliability and sustainability. And honestly, I think the conscious choice to work with subnets for us was really in that matter, in that space, thinking about the user experience at the end of the day and being able to provide, an experience that is reliable 24/7 365 days of the year. And I think, the Avalanche team was great in understanding, the the stability and the amount of like structuring that goes into building a game, like a whole MMORPG out. There are so many complex elements that go into MapleStory that needs to be supported by such tech. And I think the confidence just also really came from the fact that, we have success cases like DeFi Kingdoms already up and running, and this just kind of like really showcases the dedication that all of the parties, like us and Avalanche and all the guys included, are making to really be able to put something out there that can last a very, very long time, possibly the next 20 years.
Angela Dreamer, thank you so much for joining us on stage this morning, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you for having
All right,
us.
thank you for having us.
Being here.